Hey, welcome to Creative Block. We're your hosts, V.
And Sean. We interview people in the creative industries about their life, work, and hobbies while we doodle jam.
We asked people on our social medias if they had specific topics they wanted us to discuss, as well as some drawing prompts.
Today, we have with us MOSS LAWTON.
That's me.
It's you. That's
I'm here.
you.
Hi.
Hi. Did I do okay with your name? Is there any other enunciation that I do wrong?
No, that's correct.
Okay.
You're good.
LAWTON! You know, I wasn't sure if I'm supposed
I
to.
think the louder the better, but other than that, it's fine.
MOSS LAWTON! That's the way to pronounce it.
Yeah, if your mic's not clipping out, you've said it wrong.
Yeah, you have to yell it. Yeah, you have to go.
Oh, right. Okay, yeah. You have an amazing career. I have to remember to yell it every time.
Yep.
You've done storyboards, you've directed, and you just published your first graphic novel. And before the graphic novel, you also did zines, and so you've done comics on the side for a while. This is also cool. And you know what? I kind of want to get right into it.
Okay.
I wanted to, and I'm actually even gonna say, so our patron, Bialin's asked exactly the question that I wanted to ask you, which is, how do you juggle working on your personal work and your studio job at the same time?
Oh, God.
Let's get into it.
Nobody's gonna like this answer, but I'm a workaholic, and I don't recommend doing a graphic novel and an animation job at the same time. It's really, really difficult. I don't see my friends as much as I want to. I'm tired all the time. My body hurts. It's a lot of time management is what it is.
Tricks for time management. Do you have share the
yeah, I mean,
arcane
for time management, I work from 9 to 6 for my day job, and at 6 o'clock I clock out no matter what. Unless there is a work emergency, I do not do overtime ever. You will never catch me doing overtime. So then I can eat dinner and then shift into comics mode after work, where I can change locations from my desk, where I work on animation stuff, and then I can take my iPad out into the living room or to a coffee shop or something like that and do comics somewhere else. So I kind of have a separation of my animation work and my comics work, and it helps me compartmentalize everything.
I think that's great. I love that you brought that up as fast, because I feel like that is so important to just kind of rejuvenate, or just kind of get into the work mode that is okay, this isn't my day job anymore.
Yeah.
This is my personal project. That is so cool. How did you what was the process for you starting Hellaween and then pursuing the graphic novel? Because I'm sure when you started in animation, you didn't start Hellaween right away, right?
I kind of did. So I came up with Hellaween when I was doing my first internship right after school. I graduated in 2014, and I started doing a storyboarding internship at Blue Sky that end of summer, early fall kind of semester. And I had a not great time at Blue Sky. I just didn't jive with the studio culture at all. So I wanted to do something that was purely me. So I was just all right, what's the most self-indulgent thing that I could do? And I decided that meant emo kids, goth kids, Halloween, My Chemical Romance, a Spirit Halloween store, and Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. And so I just mashed all of those things together, and it was the first year that Inktober happened. So,
right, yeah.
I was okay, well, I like drawing in my sketchbook. I like using ink and pens, so I'll do that, but I'll come up with, some characters to draw for Inktober, and, just came up with a new bunch of characters, and I drew them the whole month, and ended up falling in love with them. And so I kind of put them on the back burner as, like, that internship ended and, like, focused more on getting a job and everything like that. And once I felt like I was stable in my career as a storyboard artist, I started putting together pitches. And I originally wanted to do Helloween as a limited series or, like, something like Over the Garden Wall, where it's, like, a special that you could show once a year. So I was pitching it for animation before it was a book. And I got really lucky. Somebody reached out to me on Twitter after I posted a really salty tweet about the industry and how I wasn't getting any traction. But they reached out and were like, hey, we like this. I'm an editor for Penguin Random House. Would you consider doing Helloween as a comic instead of a TV show? And I said, let me get my rejection letters from these studios I'm waiting to hear back from, and then let's go. So that's what happened, was I got my rejection letters from the studios and was like, all right, let's do a comic. And they were like, great, let's do a comic.
That's amazing.
That's so cool.
What a strange way to have, like, things turn around. Like, to literally go from this thing that went wrong and then throwing that out into the world and, like, this thing went wrong. And then someone's like, here, you want something to go right here?
Yeah, and, literally.
That's so funny. Yeah, it goes to show that sometimes it's okay to just kind of share online things that don't go your way. I feel like personally, I'm still very much afraid of saying when things aren't going right on, like, any type of social media, but it's kind of cool to see that, like, for you being like vulnerable in a way where it's like, oh, this isn't going where I wanted to go. Like, it kind of turned into a new opportunity. You mentioned something about feeling, like, comfortable or, like, stable in your career. Like, at what moment in your journey as a professional did you feel like you were stable?
I felt stable the year before things kind of blew up.
It didn't give you much time to feel good, huh?
No, not really.
No.
It was kind of like I started putting together a pitch at oh god, what year was it? It was like 2018 is when I first started feeling kind of good about things. And then everything just started. It was kind of the first moment where people started losing shows with no warning. And I was at Nickelodeon at the time, and so I was trying to pitch for, like, the shorts program and all of that. And, like, the shorts program pitches were going, like, well, but then there were shows at Nick that were getting pulled, and, like, we didn't really know why. So I started pitching around to other studios, and then, you know, that's 2018, 2019, and then we're in 2020, and, like, things started blowing up. Like, after Nickelodeon, I didn't have a job for longer than, like, 6 months. Like, I would say my first 3 years in animation, I would have a job for a full year, a job for a full year, a job for a full year. And then suddenly I couldn't get a job that would last longer than 6 months. Seasons got shorter. Shows weren't getting picked up for season 2s. Or I was working on, like, a TV feature. Like, I was working on the Troll Hunters movie. And, like, that has a finite timeline. There's not gonna be another one. That was the end. So it was a lot of stuff that was either finite or didn't get picked up for a season 2. And then the pandemic happened. So, everything was bad.
Yeah, that's so scary. But that's the moment but that's around the time you got your graphic novel. Do you feel like that kind of helped you a little bit? Like psychologically, like mentally? You have that?
Yes and no. So I had a hard time finding work in 2020. I was working on Monsters at Work, which I loved working on, but they weren't picking them up for a season 2 yet. They didn't know what they were going to do, so everybody rolled off. And after I rolled off, there wasn't anything else at Disney that was taking new artists. I struggled to find other work, so I was just kind of freelancing at a bunch of different places for super unstable, just getting little pieces of work where I could. And so I was like, all right, well, while I have all this time, while I'm unemployed, I will put my whole ass into pitching. So, as just like, I need to do something that maybe if I can't find a stable job, maybe I can pitch a show and like something will grab on and I'll have something to do. But it was rough out there. 2020 was really hard.
Yeah, that it's hard because finding a gig when you're like inside and your network, you don't have the means to hang out with your pals as much, is all like so crazy, right? Because I feel like a lot of the times finding a gig, I don't know, what's been your experience like looking for a gig and finding a gig? Like, how would you describe the process of like looking for a job?
I do a lot of asking around to friends, and hoping for the best. I think because I've worked at so many different studios for such short amounts of times, I have a good relationship with a lot of recruiters. So I feel pretty comfortable cold emailing when I need work. Just to say, hey, I was working on this show a year ago. Do you have any freelance? Do you have any jobs available? You already know my skill set. So I would just cold email recruiters because I already knew them.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, I was gonna say, because I feel like, and it's also a question for you, Sean, I guess, but it's like, for me, when I look for a gig, when I'm like actively like hungry and looking for a gig, I was just like asking all my pals, and I'm like, hey, sorry, have you heard anything?
Yeah, it feels like asking for a favor sometimes, which is not how it should be, because they can be in the same position, and that can be that way for the whole rest of our lives, that we you just ask around. And really, like, once you get to a certain point, it shouldn't feel like sticking your neck out for someone to be like, hey, do we have any job, talking to the producer on the show and just being like, hey, are we hiring for anything? Because I have some people that would be really good for this show. And, once somebody's comfortable there. But I do think that the pandemic changed the dynamics a lot going from show to show, because so much of getting hired and rehired is working in a place with somebody, and then they're thinking of you. They're thinking of how fun it was to have you in the room. They're thinking of like, oh man, they were a joy to work on this show. They have you on their mind. And when you don't have that, like when most of the time when I'm on a show, all I see the whole time is maybe my board partner and my director.
Yep.
Or if I'm directing the board artists and the team, like in sectioned amounts, unless there's like big announcement meetings, and you just don't get to become friends with people on the crew as easily, and it makes getting new work harder. I don't know if that's your guys' experience also.
Oh, it absolutely is. I briefly worked at a studio that I did not have a great time on and wound up getting let go. And I was like, all right, well, if I'm not a good fit for this show, did anyone tell the recruiters that I'm available? And they were like, oh, no, we didn't. That would have been a good idea. And it's like, wow, communication is really... To
be fair, though, I know what studio you're talking about, and they're not the best about transferring talent over. It's their staple. It's their little quirk.
Yeah, but it's not a great quirk to have.
But that also speaks volumes to just the fact that, like, there's nothing wrong with communicating and asking, and because most of the time people are thinking about a billion things throughout the day, and even though they should do something and let the recruiters know that people are available, odds are they're thinking about a billion other different things, and it doesn't hurt for you to be like, hey, I'm around, whatever, like, did you say this? And they'd be like, oh, I meant to say this, I like you, like, yeah, sure, I'll do that.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, like, I think people underestimate the power of reaching out and asking.
Yeah, that's very true. I think it's because we're all so shy and we're like, it's so uncomfortable. I'm not used to it.
I think I've been so chronically unemployed and like bouncing between jobs so much during my career. I am not shy about any of that, just because it's like survival, that I can't afford to be shy.
Have you ever been shy, though? Or is it just like, do you feel like your personality has always been a little more extroverted?
I feel like I've always leaned more extroverted. I'm like very insular, but not introverted. That, like, I'll keep to myself, but I'm not afraid to speak up for myself. I'm not afraid to go out there, meet new people. I'm not afraid to, like, email people. I don't like phone calls, but I'm not afraid to, like, reach out to people.
So would you consider yourself an extrovert first or a goth first?
A goth first.
Do you find yourself to be a pariah in the goth community?
For being
as
an extrovert?
Yeah.
I think I'm a little uncommon.
Not one of us, you know.
No. I feel like goth are like, okay, let's talk goth about for a little bit. I feel like goth are like they're not that introverted. It's just like they want to be around their people.
Yeah,
right?
I don't think goths are as introverted as people think either. I think they just like their community, and so they're gonna stick to their own and not necessarily go outside of it. But I don't think that means that every single one of them is an introvert.
True. Yeah. No, you're right. But that is the perception that they're all shy and they're thinking about, you know, storm clouds in the corner. You know?
Yeah.
Wait, so what aspect of the goth culture do you identify with the most? Because for some reason I've never pictured you to be the kind of person to be like moody and think about sad thoughts.
I am not a sad person, but I think about death a lot. I'm like fascinated by it. I love skeletons. I have a pretty large collection of bones in my home.
Yes, and they're really cool too. Like you have like a ton of like different skulls too. Like you have birds and like kind of like
one of my favorite skulls that I have, I would say, are I have an impala that I really love, and I have a mako shark jaw that I'm obsessed with. So yeah, if you come to my place, there's just bones everywhere.
And you have a little buddy skeleton that you dress up for every different time of the year. I love it so much.
I have a 5 foot tall skeleton. His name is Bonji. He's a he/him lesbian. And he sits at my kitchen table year-round, and so I will dress him up for the different seasons. So, like, summertime, I'll give him a little baseball hat and sunglasses, and during Halloween, being a skeleton isn't enough, so I'll put, like, a witch hat on him.
I love it so much. I'm so jealous. I've always kind of, like, I don't know what it is. There's, like, a certain type of people that, and you can see it in kids. I've seen like videos of tiny little kids running up to skeletons and giving them a hug.
Oh yeah,
there's multiple videos like this, and I don't know what it is, but I am also part of like, but I've never owned a skeleton, so
hey, 'tis the season to change that. It's October, baby. Time to go out and get that skeleton. True.
I mean, listen, we all have skeletons inside of us. It's about self-love.
We all have skeletons in our closets. Oops, not the right one.
No, that works too. We all have hidden secrets. To high five.
I kind of wanted to take a conversation back, like
away
really
from
fast
goth?
away from goth. Because I know I could just ramble about this for forever, but I also want to ask more animation questions. I wanted to ask you about, so you talked about the internship you had at Blue Sky, and I wanted to know, and we were talking about finding jobs. I wanted to know, what was it like for you to land your first gig in the industry? How long did it take you? And what were the steps that you felt like helped you land that job?
So it's pretty spread out. I graduated in 2014, and I had been applying to basically any internship I was qualified for. And so I was doing a story test for DreamWorks for their internship. They wound up rejecting me, but my test wound up getting me the attention of the Blue Sky recruiter. And so Blue Sky really liked my DreamWorks test, and they were like, fuck DreamWorks, come hang out at Blue Sky. And I was like, okay, that sounds fun.
What were they, looking over the cubicle door? How did they
Blue Sky's application period was after DreamWorks's. So I was allowed to put my DreamWorks test in my portfolio as another portfolio piece.
Nice.
So Blue Sky was like, oh, how did you come up with this? And I was like, oh, it was actually for a DreamWorks test for for a different internship that I didn't get. And they're like, all right, well, we like it, so screw them, which was really funny. And then I found out that I didn't jive with the studio at all, so I left. I did the whole internship, but by the end of it, they really liked all 4 of us. And so they brought us all into a meeting, and they're like, hey, so we love the work that all of you have been doing. However, we don't have jobs for all 4 of you, so we want to extend your internship to see if we can, like, place you on a movie and see if you fit, kind of do, like, a little bit of a casting call. And I was like, oh, well, actually, I'm going to make your life easier. I'm going to pull myself out, and I'm just going to end on my original end date. And they're like, oh, did you find a job? And I was like, no, I didn't find another job, but I'm that unhappy here that I would rather go live with my parents. And
mic drop.
Yeah.
So we don't have to get specific about this studio, but I'm curious, what are some working conditions at a studio that are big red flags to you that make you go like, this is not the culture for me?
I think a lot of it was because I was a early 20-something non-male, and it was like all 40-year-old men who are all dads, and like there's literally nothing wrong with that, but I didn't have anyone to connect to. There was nobody who was on my level.
Got you.
And it just, like, I had a really hard time making friends. Even though people were nice, I just couldn't connect with the people who were there. And I couldn't connect with the material that they were making. And it just, I'm from California, so all my friends, all the connections that I had are all in California. So I was suddenly on the East Coast where I had 0 family, no friends, and then I wasn't making friends at the studio, and so it was just like, oh god, I'm so alone. So it was like the aloneness that really, like, more than anything else, I felt so isolated that, like, the culture of Greenwich, Connecticut is a Buffalo Wild Wings and golf courses as far as the eye can see.
Sure.
And I was like, I'm gonna die here. So I left.
I'm gonna die here. Suddenly you turn 90 years old. And it's
right.
Your
That,
life
like,
is
it's
over.
like, God, if I stay here, I'm gonna blink and I'm gonna be 70. And, like, I couldn't deal with it. So I went back to California. I applied for a ton of jobs. I tested for 1 million jobs, and I didn't land anything until the next summer. So it was like a full year.
So it took
a full year.
Yeah.
That's good to hear, because I feel like sometimes, you know, when you're in school and you're like, I gotta find a job right away or else I'm like a failure. And it's like, no, like sometimes it takes time.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it took me a full year. And even then, I didn't land a full-time job. I landed another internship.
Oh, where at?
Pixar.
Oh, right. Ooh, the fame Pixar internship. Well, did you do story?
Yeah. And I had a great time at the Pixar internship.
Great.
Like, I loved our mentors. I loved my other interns. Like, we jived so quickly, and I'm still friends with a lot of those people that, like, I just had a really good group who I quickly got along with, and my mentors were really cool. I was still around friends and family, and, like, my home life wasn't as stressful as, like, being so isolated as Blue Sky. So even though I was still doing internship work, it was just like, oh, I'm, like, way more comfortable here doing this again, even though I would rather be working a full-time job. This is better. But what was nice, too, is that, like, for Blue Sky, I feel like, because my school didn't teach storyboarding that much, so Blue Sky, I felt like I got a crash course in the technical aspect of storyboarding, and Pixar gave me a crash course in the storytelling aspect of storyboarding. So powers combined made me the storyboard artist that I am today.
Oh, that is so cool. What school did you go to? I'm just curious.
I went to San Jose State.
Oh, I think we had a couple of guests who went to San Jose State.
Old Shrunken Headman Club.
Real fast, what are pros and cons for San Jose?
It's cheap It was local. The people who go there are awesome. Cons, the curriculum, when I was there at least, was wildly unfocused. The school is pretty underfunded, not very well run, but I think it's better now. I've heard good things. I've heard they have a real, actual storyboarding class, and that the students don't have to figure it out themselves anymore.
Oh, that's cool. Have you ever given talks there?
I gave a talk once, which is why I think that they have a little more going on. They have like a dedicated storyboarding teacher now, it sounds like. But when I was there, we didn't have a dedicated storyboarding teacher. We had an alum who would come back like once or twice a month to give us lectures, and that was it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's like, yeah, that's a little sparse. Really cool. What did you do after the Pixar internship?
After the Pixar internship, it took me probably another 6 months to find a job.
Oh, good to know.
Was it through any of your Pixar internship contacts, or again completely
random? Completely different from it.
Look at all these fresh starts that you're having, and each time you manage to find a way to get into something.
You're like a real
scrappy.
warrior. Yeah.
I'm like a cockroach. You can step on me a bunch of times and I won't die.
I love that. People who identify as cockroach are like, I feel it, because I used to also call myself the roach.
But yeah, I probably tested for another like 10 different shows in between Pixar and getting my first full-time job. And so it was just like one day I was planning, so I have a cousin that lives in West Hollywood, and so I was about to call him to be like, all right, I'm just going to go down there for a month. I'm going to live with my cousin and see if I can like do any footwork in person to meet people and make connections and get jobs, and then go from there. And as soon as I put that plan in motion, I got an email in my inbox from Warner Animation Group asking if I was interested in a job on the Lego Movie 2. So I was like, okay, the universe is listening. That's a sign of something. So I wound up packing a suitcase into my car and going down like the next day to live with my cousin. So that I could interview. It was like a Wednesday. I drove down Thursday and had my interview Friday to get the job.
That's such a fast turnaround.
Yeah, and so it was like a week later, they got back to me and they were like, great, you're hired. Welcome to Lego Movie 2.
That is so cool. How do you think they found your work? Did you email them, or was it like, was it social media?
I think it was a friend of mine from San Jose who was working at Disney at the time, knew somebody who was working on Lego Movie and forwarded my name. So it was like 2 or 3 degrees of separation that my resume just like made it through the right people and onto the right desk. And then in the interview, I think I made the right pop culture references.
Nice.
That like, cause Lego is very pop culture, satire. So like I had just seen Noel Fielding do stand-up in San Francisco, and the director at the time was like, I just saw Noel Fielding do stand-up in Los Angeles yesterday. So like immediate connection. And so we had very similar reference points, and I think that helped a lot with that.
That's so true. I feel like every time I hear somebody having like a good interview or like a good general is like when you connect on like media that you both love. And
totally.
That's really cool. Wow. So you started Inktober all the way back when you were at Blue Sky.
Yeah.
So Halloween was already brewing for all this time.
It's been almost 10 years.
Whoa.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's so crazy. How? Because you've put a couple of zines before you did the graphic novel.
Yeah, so the zines were collections of Inktober drawings that I was like.
Some of them were comics. I bought a comic that was not the graphic novel.
So I did a comic after Inktober.
Okay.
That was around the time I started pitching. It was like before I started pitching, I wanted to do something that was mine and just to see if I could do it. I don't have a ton of experience in writing. I say that having published a graphic novel. But I'm not like, I'm an artist and a storyteller before I'm a writer. Writing is like a means to the ends for me. But so I made this 30-page comic just to see if I could do it, and also use as a proof of concept for pitching. So I came up with this short idea and then drew this, 30-page comic that kind of functioned as a pilot that I could leave in the room after I would pitch the show.
Have you used, like, I know that you're coming out with this comic, but have you taken this comic and are you using that currently to pitch, or do you have a deal with them that, like, for right now you're just doing the comic?
Right now I'm just doing the comic, but there are some irons in the fire of potentially doing more, and that's all I'm gonna say about that, because it's too early to say anything else.
That is so cool, dude. Yeah.
I think that there really is no better asset that an artist has in pitching than to make a portion of the thing themselves, because I think that there's a tendency with pitches that you pitch something and it's not all the way fleshed out, and then they start adding stuff, and then you're trying to compromise with them, and then you lose track of like what the original heart is sometimes. But if you have this thing that's unapologetically like, this is what I made completely, and like, this is what I would make if the studio didn't touch it at all, and then it's sort of like, here, plop down on the table, like, you know, do you want something like this? and that's what it would be. I could make it.
I can't tell you how many meetings I had where I left with an executive saying, like, we can't do anything with this because it's too niche, but if it was a graphic novel, we could do something.
That's so interesting. That's so like, interesting.
I hate that I have to, like, make it before I'm allowed to make it, because I do want to make a movie or a TV show or something. Like, that is the end goal for me, is I want to direct. But it frustrates me to no end that, like, I have to make the entire thing before I'm allowed to make the entire thing. But at least in this case, if the movie or the TV show never happens, I do have a comic that's completely 100% mine.
Would you say your first love is comics or animation?
Animation.
Nice. Okay. That makes a lot of sense.
I love comics, but and I would not be doing this amount of work if I didn't love comics. But I would say animation is first.
So you're talking about directing, and you're currently directing.
Yes.
So I'm guessing when you said directing like a couple of seconds ago, you meant kind of like show running, right?
Yeah.
But how would you describe your job as a director right now?
I like it a lot. This is my first directing job, so it's a lot of like organizing things to make sure that the board artist has everything that they need and feels comfortable, and when they start their boards, and making sure that going through the script with them and pitching ideas as we're going through the script of what things might look like. And after a launch, then checking in with everybody to make sure that they're hitting their deadlines, if they have any questions, any new ideas that they want to pitch, that we can run through things together as we're going. And then a lot of my job right now, because the board artists have all rolled off onto other things, is a lot of revisions. Doing a lot of revisions. Just going through and making sure that everything is what the show needs, because Monster High is pretty linear. That, like, you get a lot of good episodic one-offs, but then there is, like, a pretty big overarching story in the show. So it's a lot of making sure that everything lines up with the lore and, like, the overall story, which is really fun, because I've never worked on something like that before.
That's really cool. Yeah, and Monster High, like, character designs for that new series are just so cute. They're so fun to draw. Yeah, I did the first pass of boards for the intro, and I was just like, man, I love drawing these girls. They're so cute.
They're really cute. Yeah, I like drawing the characters a lot.
Yeah, it's a cool style. So when you say you want to make sure your artists have everything, what does that mean for you? Like, describe a little bit, like, in the nitty-gritty, like how you prep for that.
So I'm on a CG show, so we have a lot of 3D assets. that we use. And so if we have something already, then we want to make sure that the board artists have it. So like if we have a model of a set, we want to make sure that they have the model so that if they want to use it in their boards, they can. So like we have FBXs of most of our main sets of like the school especially. So if something takes place in the dorm room, then they can put the whole set into Blender and fly through it and take the exact screenshot that they need instead of having to draw the background. And so they have the scale and everything exact. Or if we have a new character, making sure that they have the most up-to-date version of what that character looks like.
So how do you go into a project where you're directing and you guys need to do something on the show, and maybe you're not as familiar with that process? Like, I don't know how much you've used 3D and boards before, but if you encounter something where you're like, you're aware that this show needs to do this thing, how do you sort of learn on the job while being in like a director's position where you're supposed to be the one that knows what to do?
I mean, thankfully I've worked on CG shows before. I would say I've worked on more CG than 2D in my career. So I'm not unfamiliar with 3D programs. I'm not like well versed in them. I couldn't build you anything. But if you were to give me Unity or Blender and I could put a set into it and go around and grab a screenshot, that's the extent of my CG knowledge. But that's kind of all you need. It's like, you don't need to know how to build anything. You don't need to know how to place a camera. You just need to know how to open a file and not mess with it.
Yeah. It's kind of like playing a video game, pretty much. It's like, okay, how do I navigate
literally.
this? Yeah. And then you just kind of like take cool screenshots. Basically, if you want to train to be a director, just play Breath of the Wild and take some really good pictures.
Yeah. So you've used, how much 3D have you used in your boards, B?
Me?
Yeah. How much experience have you had using? I'm just curious, I
thought you were gonna ask Moss. That's why, but like, that's cool because then Moss, you can like say what what's your take on that. But I personally, I only really worked in 3D on 3 shows. One was a French show where we were given the sets in 3D and we had to get Blender and then you would move the camera around and stuff. And at the time I didn't understand that lenses were so important. So I was just like, hey, here's a bunch of shots. And then it was funny because I love the supervising director on this show. He's really great and he did film school. So he's more of like, he didn't study storyboard, so he's more of a like actual camera guy. And he would redo all of my shots. But you're just like, oh man, I tried to do a Wes Anderson kind of shot. He's like, it's too flat. All right. And then after that, I guess I did Wings of Fire, which was entirely in Blender. And we were really doing it all.
Oh yeah, you guys like did boards in Blender, right?
Yeah, we basically did previs, which is for people listening who don't know what previs is, because I didn't know what previs was before Wings. In feature, you have storyboards, and after storyboards comes layout, but in feature CGI, for some reason they call it previs. And I think it's because they just take the character in the T-pose and they move the character throughout the scene just to show how big the character would be in the frame. And they do the camera moves so that you can check if the compositions are correct for what the director wants. But it's not animated at all. It's just timing and composition and making sure that all the elements are like framed correctly. So so that's what we would do in Wings of Fire, because Wings was we were supposed to work with an overseas studio, and it was the pipeline from Clone Wars, from the CG Star Wars.
Oh yeah, I've heard that they do that.
Yeah, which is honestly pretty cool. Like, I think for a TV pipeline, a prestige, like high expensive show TV pipeline, that's pretty cool. For feature, since you have like people whose jobs it is to do previs, I don't know if it's as necessary. And then for Monster High, it makes sense that you would like take the screenshots, because I took a couple of screenshots from what was available, or like I was in Blender and just kind of did the wings thing there. But yeah, I don't know, I think it's kind of fun when you get the hang of it, when you get kind of into that groove. I think it's kind of fun. Well, how did you like it, Moss?
Yeah, I like it. I'm not a huge fan of drawing backgrounds, so it's nice.
Yeah, and when you worked on Lego Movie 2, like you didn't have to use CG, did you?
No, that was all 2D. And we boarded in Photoshop, which I hate doing. That I learned how to storyboard in Photoshop. And I did that for a lot of my early career. Blue Sky, we did Photoshop. Lego Movie, we did Photoshop. My school, we did Photoshop. Goodness. Pixar, we did pen and paper, which was crazy. And then when I got to Nickelodeon, I had to learn Storyboard Pro. But now that I boarded Storyboard Pro, I never want to go back to Photoshop. I hate it so much.
But all of those other experiences sound crazy to me. I've never been on a show storyboarding and they wanted me to use Photoshop. That I don't know. Maybe it's done more than I think. But
it's very common in feature.
It's very common in feature.
Which is crazy, because it's like, what you're wasting so much time. And I think, okay, here's what I'll say. Hot take incoming, y'all. But I think it's because Photoshop has the fancy brushes. But
I think it's because Photoshop has the fancy brushes and they don't want to let them go.
Yes, but Storyboard Pro has the fancy brushes too now. Last time I worked on a feature.
So they have no excuse.
Yeah, I did it all in Storyboard Pro, and I used all the little tones and all the little gradients to make it look nice and featurey, and they were very happy, so...
Yeah, I've gotten lucky that I've been on a couple of projects that use both, like Troll Hunters, Rise of the Titans, the movie, and then Twits, which is now going to be a feature at Netflix. I was working on an earlier version of the project where it was an 8-episode miniseries, but those were both Photoshop first, but they were like, if you know how to use Flix with Storyboard Pro, you can use Storyboard Pro. And I was like, great, I'll figure it out. So on my last like feature projects, I used Storyboard Pro because there was no way in hell I was going to use Photoshop.
Flix is so painful.
I hate Flix. Flix is the devil.
For Flix people listening,
it's a file management like compiling system. It's similar to Photoshop Bridge, but worse.
It's so crazy because for people listening, when you're in TV, you only use Storyboard Pro because you can do everything in Storyboard Pro. You can do literally everything. You can do an animatic. You can take your project really far. I even have a friend who was a previous guest on this podcast, Etienne Guignard. Check it out. Who animated an entire short animated in Storyboard Pro. Mm-hmm. So you can take things really far, but Flix...
I think that's the other reason. Why they haven't switched over, though, is because there's a lot of storyboard artists that are like, I don't want to have to do any timing. What, you know? And in Storyboard Pro, once you start working in Storyboard Pro, it's really easy to do timing stuff, and then you don't have an animatic editor that's really needed as much because all the animators are doing... all the storyboard artists are doing timing of the boards. I don't know. So I think that's another reason.
I want to believe that, but I don't.
I think what the actual reason that it is, which I found out when I was working on Spider-Verse, is that Flix allows you to have anybody work on any sequence and just note up a sequence very easily. So because when you work in Storyboard Pro, you would have to get the file and it would be a huge pain in the ass. But when you work with Flix, you can just kind of like all the sequences are available all the time on the server, and you can just kind of like populate your file real fast and then just boop boop do a couple of changes on that sequence and upload it back, and it just uploads a couple of JPEGs, and I think it just marks it really nicely for the editor. So I think it's a production pipeline.
Yeah, I think it's really helpful for editors and pipeline.
No, I was talking more about the Photoshop thing because I have no clue. I've never worked with Flix, but
Because Photoshop is used with Flicks, so the way it works is like whatever, whatever program you're using, it feeds into Flicks.
Storyboard Pro does not. It will play with Flicks, but it doesn't play nicely with Flicks. Photoshop plays nicely with Flicks. So that's why I think, it's a pipeline thing.
Yeah, it's just because you're doing so many notes on scenes forever that
that it's really easy if like someone else's sequence needs a little fix, but they're busy, but I'm not, so I can go in and be like, all right, Emmett needs a hat in this scene. I'm gonna put a hat on him real quick.
Yeah, exactly. Or even just like they're like, oh, like they're smiling a little bit too much on this frame. Can we have it a little less of a smile? And you're like, fix. It's really interesting. Because I've worked as a director on Monster High, Moss. How many storyboard artists do you oversee per episode? 2. And how do you split your episodes? Do you kind of like split in like multiple little sections and give it to whoever fits best?
So we don't split episodes. It's one artist per episode.
Oh, so you're overseeing 2 episodes at a time?
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
Are they staggered? Or are they at the same time? Like
I would say they're staggered. We're also like towards the end of season 2, so right now it's a lot more like finishing everything up than overseeing new episodes coming in. But when that was happening, it was staggered. That like, how often was it? It was like every couple of weeks. They would kind of alternate. So they weren't on the same schedule at all.
That's so crazy.
But it's all I've ever known, so I don't know what doing one episode at a time is like.
Yeah, I feel because Sean, you've directed too, right?
I have directed, yes, but in a different capacity. I've done like directing and supervising directing on not shows and movies, but on like an ad campaign or something like that, where I'm overseeing everything, like the designers, storyboarders, and animation at the same time, and I'm giving notes on everything versus just the boards. I haven't spent as much time doing like overseeing boards alone.
Because I feel like in my experience directing, I had 3 board artists for 22 and on Captain Fall, and we would divide up the episode in lots of little chunks, and eventually you would build the episode with all of the little different chunks, but it's kind of a pain in the ass because you can only have one person working on a sequence at any given moment, and if that person's taking a little long, then the sequence is kind of like locked away with that person, just because of like the way the files work. And with Wings, it was similar. We were kind of like splitting up the sequences in like lots of little chunks, and you kind of like keep an eye on like different chunks, but it's just a single episode. That was also 45 minutes, which was crazy.
That's a lot of episode.
It's I was just like every time you watch the animatic, you're like, wait, I'm only halfway through. What?
Oh god. I know. I feel like getting through an 11-minute is already so much.
Right. That takes so much time just to watch it through once.
Yeah.
Like, let alone do it another time. I'm assuming. I mean, do you take really good notes about like things that you saw, and then you go back to the specific spots?
I don't know. Okay, so that's really interesting. And Moss, I want to know like if you feel that way, but I feel like because when you're overseeing an episode, even if it's long, you have all of these like Excel sheets, and you know all of the scenes by heart, and to the point where I was just like, yeah, it's E4, we're working on E4 right now, and the supervising director would be like, I have no fucking clue what E4 is. And I'm like, sorry.
It's my chess move. I take your bishop with my rook.
I mean, we have similar, that even though we only have one artist per episode, we do split episodes into 6 pieces.
Okay.
So that as we're like, because that's really helpful for after boards are handed in, that once board artists give me all 6 parts, I can split up the sections to revisionists, so I can have 2 revisionists working at the same time, and we can get through that faster, which is nice. Or if I'm working with the editor and he's like, oh, there's a thing that you need to fix on, like, this isn't hooking up on part 3, and then I can just go into the file that's marked part 3 and fix that thing, and I don't have to open an entire episode's worth of files.
Yeah.
So that's really nice, is that, like, the files don't get gigantic.
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure you're uploading it on a server, and that was the thing on Captain Fall. It took a million years every time we would just, like, we had to download it and, like, unzip it and then, like, and then upload it back after you did the notes. So yeah, you don't want the files to get too big. We're getting real deep in the nitty-gritty, y'all. Like, I hope you're into this files conversation.
I hope you love programs.
Hey, unfortunately, if anyone listening wants to be a director, it's a lot of project management. You're going to be working with files, and you're going to manage people. You're not going to draw as much, so...
What's your hot tip on managing people? What's your management style? What's your philosophy?
I like talking to my artists. I usually will want to do a couple of check-ins as they're going, but usually, like, we try to find something that works for them. Like, if they don't need as many check-ins, it can kind of just be like a message on Teams chat and be like, hey, you want to go over anything on Friday? Nope, I'm good. Okay, great. Or if they're like, oh, I need you to check in with me multiple times a week, then it's like, okay, I'll do a text check-in, like, on Wednesday, and then we can do a Zoom check-in on Friday, and, like, then there's opportunities for me to talk to everybody, but I can talk to everybody on their own pace, because everybody has different preferences, and I want to be cognizant of what everyone's preferences are. If somebody just turns in good work and just wants to be left alone, I want to respect that, but if somebody needs more help to keep them on track, then I want to be there for them and make sure that, like, my check-ins are helping them hit their deadlines, because they need that. I like communicating with everybody. And I think that's a big part of directing, is being able to talk to everyone.
Do you also have, like, okay, one of my favorite things to do when I was directing was, like, sometimes you're, like, in these, like, long ass boring meetings or whatever, and then, like, your board artist was like, oh, I kind of, like, need a shot for, like, the scene, and then you can just kind of, like, doodle, like, 5 lines, and you're like, here you go, and then they, like, turn it into a beautiful drawing, and you're like, that's my shot. You did, like, literally nothing. You did, like, just 5 lines.
Yeah, I just did that with a revisionist recently, who's a freaking rock star, that I gave her the nastiest, dirtiest thumbnail of all time, and she turned it into something beautiful, and I was like, I don't know how you turned this into that, but great job. I'm glad we hired you.
I don't know if you guys have noticed, but I feel like revisionists are often very eager to prove themselves.
Oh, for sure.
And so they're like, go, like, above and beyond, and you're like, whoa.
Yeah, I never want to make board artists do anything that they're not required to do. Like, nobody's boarding things from scratch from me. That, like, if I need a new scene, I will always thumbnail it for them. Or, like, I'm always going to give them something to work off of. I'm never going to let a revisionist go in blind.
That's super cool. I love that. I love that you're, like, kind of, you're providing a lot. Because I feel like it really depends on the director. There's, like, some very, like, different, like, management styles out there.
Yeah, I'm probably pretty hands-on.
Yeah, we just say that you give a lot of notes.
Not that I give a lot of notes. I get a lot of notes back from, like, animatic check-ins.
So you're relaying a lot of notes,
so I'm
but they don't usually
relaying
come
a lot
from
of
you.
notes. Yeah, they're not necessarily coming from me.
Yeah. Do you ever massage the notes a little bit so they're a little bit more palatable? Like, you translate the notes? Yeah.
Yeah. I like to do notes directly on the file sometimes. So I'll just, like, open the storyboard file and, like, I'll mark panels that need revisions and mark in the note, and I'll just write it down in the frame. Or if I have a specific drawing or new expression in mind or a new thumbnail, I can just draw it directly on the file for them to work through.
So what is I'm curious about what your take on executive and or producer whispering you have, because there's a lot of times, I think, I don't know if you guys would agree with this, where sometimes you'll get a note that's like, this scene is off-putting, and it or like, this scene should be more like a flick and less like a swoosh and more like a flick or something, and just like a very abstract thing that you have to interpret and then give like actual tangible actionable things to your board artist to try to fix. What is your method for trying to understand, you know, or relay, you know, a note that might be a little bit more of an abstract note where you're guessing and then your board artists by proxy are guessing through you too, sort of?
Yeah, that's always complicated. I try to figure out like where the note within the note is, that like if it's this is to whatever, then maybe it's not what the note was, but the note is that something isn't working here. So I can figure out an alternative way to fix the thing that's not working while trying to address the note that was given. But I think it's usually just recognizing that like it doesn't necessarily need to be that specific strange note. The note means that something's not working. So what's not working and how do I address that?
No, that's a good answer. Also, have you had any weird S&P notes that are funny? I usually like asking that just because S&P can be wildin'.
You know, I haven't.
Sometimes.
Off the top of my head, I can't think of anything.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
I feel like our team is pretty on top of that stuff. We have some characters with like disabilities and who are or like might be neurodivergent. So we have a lot of consultants and making sure that things are done in very thoughtful ways. So I feel like that stuff is all baked into the pipeline. So we're not getting like, everybody's really careful about stuff, which I think is great for our show. So we're not getting like weird S&P notes back because we've already figured it out.
Yeah, because in my experience, like I've been on stuff where they're like, he fell into the chocolate cake, and because the cake is chocolate, it looks like poop.
That's such a common
and it's just something that's completely out of left field, you know, like, and you're like, but it's not. Like, they blow the candles out. It's a chocolate cake. You see the
context.
cake.
You watch the rest of the episode. It's clearly a cake.
When you have anything that's like brown and like slightly creamy or liquid, everybody's just like, oh, no. And then sometimes they come up with like the weirdest like side colors. They're like, well, maybe we could make a little bit yellow, and you're like, how is that better? How is that even any better? Brown, yellow, even white. I don't know. Like, white is like, it doesn't make me feel like it's not a weird body fluid, you know?
Yeah.
So everything blue all the time, no matter what it is. It's so funny. Yeah,
dude. I've had notes where they'll it'll be like, okay, they'll make a list of buildings that look phallic that we have to take out. Like, and in the style of the show, it'll be that, like, you know, there's a rule that there can't be any like hard edges, so all the buildings are rounded, and so how are you going to draw buildings that don't either look like a breast or like something phallic or something, you know? And so there was just half of our notes were just
skyline.
They were just like, this looks like a penis, this looks like a penis, this looks like a penis. It's brown and drippy. It looks like poop on a penis. Like, and it's like, oh my god, dude.
I feel like that's such a big thing for like designers. I read a comment on like some YouTube drama, and a designer was like, you would be surprised the amount of time as a graphic designer, the amount of time I spend trying to make things not look like a penis or
so often.
That's really funny.
Yeah. It's like, it's
Well, I'm glad that you don't have to deal with that. That's very good. I'm glad that you're not suffering through that.
But I wish I had a funny story to tell.
True.
It will happen. You wished for it, and now it's gonna happen.
I know.
To you.
It's only my first director job, and we're not done yet. So there's still hope to get funny S&P notes.
You know, we have a million questions for you, so I kind of want to try to get through as many of them as we can, because they're all pretty insightful, and they will all take us back to your graphic novel, Halloween. I like this question from our patron, HX the Abrasive, who asked, how do you remain focused and motivated enough to complete your own story and eventually publish it, especially in a setting more isolated than, for example, working on a show or movie with a large crew?
I think if I don't stop, I'll die. Like,
yes.
That, I always want to make stuff. And I've loved a lot of the shows that I work on, but I've worked on a lot of shows that I have not loved as much. And so there's just always this itch to make my own thing, and that I don't think will ever go away. So it's just kind of like, it's just got to come out of me somehow. And I'm really thankful that I have a publisher behind me where, like, I can make that a reality and I don't have to do that on my own. I think that's a big part of it, is that I have a publisher behind me. Is I don't have to do it on my own. I don't have to keep to my own schedule. I have people to report to and deadlines and regulations, which is nice because I need rules to get things done. If it was just me, and Halloween wouldn't be a book.
Well, how did you do it before you had those deadlines? Because you had to make the pitch, and you had to, like, do you have any ways that you, like, I don't know, motivate yourself to do a thing that's more than one drawing, or a board that's like not for work or whatever?
I guess for, like, pitching, when I was doing that, it was a lot of, like, in between jobs. Because my jobs have never been very long. So I would have time in between to do something, and I would need to do something with my hands. So I would work on a pitch instead. And I have been passionate about these characters for a long time. That, like, again, this is something that I put all of my self-indulgent interests into. So it's, like, built to be fun for me, which I think helps a lot.
Yeah, I love that answer, because I do feel like that's something that's very common and at the heart of a lot of animation people who end up doing graphic novels. Is like, you're a creator at heart, and it's like, when you work in animation, like, the chances of you being a creator and running your own show are just so very small.
It's so small.
It's so, like, yeah, people have compared it to, like, winning the lottery before, and it's like, not that it's impossible, but definitely something to keep in mind in terms of, like, you have more chance of getting a project off the ground and done if you kind of just do it.
Yeah.
That's I love when you said, or else I will die, because I feel like that's how we feel. It's the real feeling. It's like, no, I gotta, like, I don't know. That's my legacy on this planet.
Yeah, like, I wish I had a healthier answer to that, but it's...
Hey, maybe creating is not healthy. I don't know.
Like, I wish I didn't work as much as I do. Like, I work too much. I think doing a full-time director job and doing a graphic novel at the same time is immensely difficult, and it's very emotionally, physically, and mentally taxing. So if, like, I trip, then it's going to be a long recovery to get back on track. So it's a lot of time management. It's a lot of dedication. It's a lot of, like, resilience and tunnel vision that I hope won't last forever.
We talked about, before we started the show, we talked about how this new era of creative block, it's us talking about our feelings. And you said it's emotionally really hard. Describe that for us a little bit. If you're comfortable. Do you have, like, terrible moments when you're just, like, in bed crying? You're like...
No, I'm not a big crier. But, like...
You're not a real goth. I'm joking.
More of a frowner, not a crier.
Yeah, I default to anger more than sadness. That I do a lot of laying on the floor.
Oh, yeah, okay, that one.
Oh, you're a floor layer. Okay.
Yeah, I do a lot of laying on the floor, and I've got a cat, so I'll usually, like, he'll be walking by, and I'll just grab him and roll him over and be like, hey, you have to cuddle right now.
Surrender your serotonin.
Vincent, he's amazing. I love him so much.
He's the best cat in the entire world. But yeah, I'm a big floor layer.
This is a pretty cool question from our patron Mallard, who asks, what do you keep in mind when working on scary media for children? What do you think the limits are before it becomes too scary for the age group? And have studio executives, have they ever pushed back on an element that they deem too scary?
So far, nobody's pushed back on something being too scary.
Even on the ZIM movie?
Yeah, even on the ZIM movie, I don't think anybody's pushed back on that being too scary. But I also don't think that was built to be a horror movie. It's pretty hard sci-fi. That I think there are scary moments, but the Enter the Florpus is a sci-fi story.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not built into the gross out stuff, and the horror elements are not really built into it. And like for Halloween, like it's horror, but I draw inspiration from like Coraline and Over the Garden Wall and Nightmare Before Christmas, which is built for a younger audience where it's like spooky more than like horror, even though I love horror.
Mm-hmm.
But it's meant to be more spooky than outright scary.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But yeah, I haven't really had any pushback on, I had some pushback on the language in Halloween, but not the content.
Is it the F-bomb?
It's not an F-bomb, it's the B-bomb.
Really? That's so funny. Wow.
Because my book is, it's middle grade, so it's marked for, I think, like 8 to 14-year-olds is what it says on the book. So it's like for kids, but there is some cussing in Halloween that like there's a lot of like hell, damn, piss a couple times. And then spoilers, there's a pretty big bitch at the end, but it's not to anybody. It's an expression of...
It's like Jesse Pinkman when he's just like, bitch.
Yeah, it's an expression. It's an expression of an emotion. It's not to anyone. And so I had a little bit of pushback on that. And they're like, some people might not pick up your book because it says bitch in it. And I was like, those people aren't going to pick up the book anyways because it says hell on the cover.
And they're going to be surprised by the bitch at the end after they've already bought it.
That's so funny.
You know what you signed up for. It says hell in the title.
You know, moving to America, I was so confused about how people are like very uptight about language and like how there's like different levels. Like first of all, I didn't know hell was a bad word. I was like, I don't know. Hell is just hell.
It shouldn't be. It's just a place.
Exactly. I'm like, it's just a place. I don't understand.
Well, did you know that in like music videos when someone says God damn it, they don't bleep out the damn it, but they bleep
out the God part. Yeah.
Oh, that's so crazy.
So taking the Lord's name in vain is also a gross word.
I think also there was a time where if you said asshole, they would bleep out hole but not ass.
That's so funny. What? That's so funny.
Like butts are fine, but not the hole.
The hole is forbidden.
Yeah,
the forbidden hole.
That's so crazy. That's so crazy. Wow, you learn something every day.
It's confusing. Yeah, it's confusing. The weird rules. And then you ask why, and then you're like, oh, there's just these like it's probably like the Christian Moms of America protest it or something, you know, like
oh yeah. Yeah. 100%. It's funny because I don't know if I already said this on the podcast, but I'm working on a short and it's 2 girls and they say a lot of like, oh my gosh. And I'm like, for me, oh my gosh. And it's funny because when I talk to UK people and I've picked up the oh my gosh from the US, right? And UK people are like, you sound like such a prude when you say gosh. I'm like, I'm sorry, that's how people talk. But I was told like, are you sure you want to have them say oh my gosh? Because that might make the audience for your short smaller. And I was like, but I think they say oh my gosh in Gumball, and then because you know there's like different tiers. And it's like, well, yeah, you don't get a G if you say gosh, but you might get like a Y7 or something. And I was like, this is so funny to me. It's so funny to me. I don't know. It's so crazy.
It's all like so stupid and arbitrary.
I think the kids can handle gosh.
No, the kids can handle it. The parents.
It's the parents.
They cannot. It's too edgy. Too edgy.
I did a signing when my book came out at a bookstore in Burbank called Dark Delicacies. That's really cool. They specialize in like horror stuff. So there was this little girl who came in who was probably like 6 or 7 years old, like pretty young, who was there for another author who was signing books that were like for children, whereas mine is like for children and teens. But she looked at my book and like whispered to her mom, like, "There's a swear word on the cover."
That's so funny.
But then like she talked to me a little bit, and then by the time that she had finished up with the other author and like circled back around and was like, "I want to buy your book too. Like, I'm interested." And so I was like, "All right, if your mom's cool with it, then I'm cool with it." And so her mom was like, "Yep, she can handle it.
Oh,
she can handle a couple of cuss words."
That is
good.
So cute. Yeah, because I feel like when you're a kid, you want to do the things that are a little just kind of too old for you.
Too old for you. Yeah.
You want to be like you're curious. You want to know the secrets of the world.
And I really like that the mom was supportive of that. Of like, yeah, you can have a little bit of taste of something that you might not be ready for. Let's find out if you're ready for it.
Yeah, that's really cool. How was so how many book signings have you done so far, and what's the experience been like for you?
I've just done the one, but I've got another one coming up at the end of the month on October 30th with the author of The Glass Scientist, who I believe was on this show very recently.
Yes, episode came out. Sage Coutinho. Check out their episode. It's
they're
cool.
Really great. We have the same publisher, so we're gonna do like a joint thing at the end of the month. So if you're local to Los Angeles, you should come.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Sage is awesome. And I bought your book when it was pre-order season, and because I moved, I think the book just got lost somewhere in the mail.
Oh no.
So I'm gonna buy it again. So I'm helping you reach that New York Times bestseller.
Thank you. You're gonna be at Lightbox Expo, right?
Yes, but as a panelist, not as I don't have a table. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But I love no, this is going to be great because it's going to be the first year I get to roam around. And Lightbox Expo, unfortunately, this episode's coming out after Lightbox Expo will have happened. But it's a really fun event to check out for like the artist alley. Everybody's so great. Everybody has like amazing books and prints and stickers. So I can finally roam around in the artist alley and not have to worry about my table. And I think that's going to be pretty cool.
Hell yeah.
You know what? Let's talk about Halloween a little bit more. That's so funny. This one is like an interesting question. A special raptor on Instagram asks, "What's the Halloween elevator pitch?"
The Halloween elevator pitch. I used to describe it as 80s kids on bikes horror, but it's the 2000s kids on skateboards horror.
Oh,
so, like,
that's cool.
Yeah, like It or Stranger Things, that type of thing, except pace it up a couple of decades and put them on skateboards instead of bicycles.
I love it. Do you think skateboards is still cool?
I think skateboards are still cool. I don't know how to skateboard, but I think they're cool.
I'm wondering if you're listening to this episode on Spotify or YouTube, leave in the comments, do you think skateboards are still cool? Because it's the 2020s, y'all, and we're too old to know.
Yeah.
Dude, I used to be so scared of skateboarding because all my friends that skateboarded broke their wrists and arms and stuff, and I was like, but that's my drawing wrist. And so like I was always like, I wanted to be a skateboarder, but I was always like, I'm definitely gonna break my hand, but I want to be an artist.
So when I was a kid, I rollerblade still sometimes, not often, but I did break my wrist as a kid rollerblading. So that's a real fear.
And is that why you rollerblade a little bit less, or is it just because you love working so much?
I think it's just there's not as many places to rollerblade anymore. Like, I guess I could go to a roller rink or something, but roads aren't great to rollerblade on.
There's always a security guard chasing you.
Right, yeah. It's also just hard to like put skates on and take them off, and then you have to carry them, and they're kind of a hassle.
Yeah, I can see that. They're like so chunky.
Whereas like a skateboard is just like one thing, and it's lighter, and you don't have to take your shoes on and off.
That's
you should get
so
Heelys.
true.
I should get Heelys. That's a good idea.
Heelys are so fun. Oh my god. I cannot wait to see you wear Heelys. Oh my god. I'll just be like sliding around. I'll be like, oh, they're a ghost. Dariush creates on Instagram asks, what was the scripting process like for Halloween? I'm really curious about that too. Like, how'd you write? Like, do you write your whole script? Do you just kind of like take it one page at a time?
Yeah, I write it like it's a TV script because that's what I'm used to as a storyboard artist, that I'm used to working from like a completed thing. My script doesn't need to be final, but I use Final Draft on my iPad and I'll write it like a TV script that I would get to storyboard from and then go from there. Usually, like, every version, I'll get notes back from my editor and, like, I'll address any notes in, like, a second draft of the written version, and then I'll address notes in thumbnail, pencils, inks. So I'm like, constantly revising as I go, but I usually like to have a finished version of the script before I start drawing.
Do you get notes from your publisher, or is it just notes that you give yourself?
Notes from my editor, yeah. So I work with one editor from Penguin Random House, who's great. So I turn everything into him. He is great about, like, giving me notes, having questions about things that readers might have questions about, or if, like, there's story issues, we can hop on a call together and talk through it. Like, he's usually available to, like, talk through story stuff, which is helpful, because I am not a natural-born writer.
That is so cool.
So it's nice to have someone who knows what they're doing.
Yeah. How did you get paired up with him? Was he the one that reached out to you?
He's the one who reached out to me. Yeah, he's the one who found me on Twitter and reached out to me. So he's been the guy through the entire process.
The guy.
Chris Hernandez. Shout out to you wherever you are.
Chris! You hear this? I don't know. Leave a comment. I don't know. This is a quick one, but from Ordinary Ruby Fan. Do you plan on making another graphic novel continuation of Halloween, or one that takes place in the same world/universe?
Yes, I am deep into book 2 as we speak. Book 2 is happening. We don't have a date for it yet, but I am in the thick of it. So it'll take place directly after the events of the first book. Like, it picks up the morning after.
Do you have, can you tell us how many books you have planned total, or is it a secret?
I have multiple books in my brain. Currently, I have a 2-book deal. So, okay. We are guaranteed 2 books, and if you want more, you gotta buy the books.
Everybody buy the books.
Buy the books. If you want more Halloween, tell your friends, tell your mom.
Draw some fan art, make some noise.
Yeah.
That's how.
Ask your mom whether you can handle it. Comment whether skateboarding's still cool. Buy the books.
Comment. Skateboarding's still cool. So this is a little bit of a broad question. So you can answer this however you want, but Tomules.art asks, any tips for people trying to get their foot in the door of the art world? So I think the art world means like both animation and or comics.
Draw things and talk to people. I think that a lot of people have the art on lock. They don't have the talking to people down. So talking to people can be anything. Like, it doesn't need to be business networking. It can be making friends and building a community online. It can be building a community locally and go from there. But you have to make friends. You have to make connections in whatever art community that you're in. You have to talk to people.
So true. And it is hard to talk to people.
It's very hard, but I can guarantee that everyone else also thinks it's hard, so you're not alone.
Last Rindink asks if you have a favorite Halloween movie.
Favorite Halloween movie? That's a great question. I really like Trick or Treat. It's a classic. I like Nightmare Before Christmas, obviously, which I actually think is more of a Christmas movie than a Halloween movie.
Yeah.
Because it's about Christmas, not about
Everyone
Halloween.
fight about this in the comments.
I know, I'm here to start fights.
Yes.
Nightmare Before Christmas is a Christmas movie, and I will die on that hill. I watch Over the Garden Wall every year. What do I love? I have a bunch. I love Hocus Pocus. Hocus Pocus is great. I love all the hokey Disney ones. But I also love like horror stuff. Like I love stuff that's not necessarily Halloween related. But I like Scream, and I like Hellboy, and all kinds of stuff. I like monster movies. Monster movies are my favorite.
Yeah, monsters are great. I love these like trends online of like humanizing the monsters, you know, like when you see like Jason like being like all sweet. I don't know. Those are so fun. They're so cute.
I'm really into Chucky right now.
Chuck is so weird. I still have to get into it, but I don't know. There's something about Chucky that I'm like, this is too out there. This is so crazy.
It's really stupid, but it's really good.
Chucky was my first fear.
Really?
My first monster fear. Okay, no, my first fear was my parents trying to they used to chase me around the house and try to pinch me, and they had a song that they sang.
That's so creepy.
They'd say, "We pinch his butt, we pinch his cheeks, we pinch him all over," and they would chase me around, and I would lock myself in the closet and I would cry. But my second
I've
fear,
just heard like an origin story for you.
Yeah.
my second greatest fear was Chucky. And I remember there was a time when I used to talk to my parents about I wish I had a baby sister. And so for Christmas one year they gave me a baby doll. Very progressive. They gave me this baby doll, one of the ones that you fill with warm water so it's warm. And I used to take care of this baby doll. But then I saw just a trailer for Chucky.
Oh my God.
And I had this baby doll in my room that would just sit there in the corner. And I just like, there was all these nights where I just ran in crying, and my parents got rid of it. But yeah, Chucky was one of my first great fears.
Okay, now hearing you say this kind of, now I realize I was scared as a child of a little plush toy, which was actually a little teddy bear that my dad used to have as his like blankie, I guess, you know, like his like little favorite toy when he was a child. But for some reason that little bear looked so evil. He had like no hair and and then his eyes were buttons, and he had like a little like cardigan that was like crocheted but in very thick, like very I don't know, it just looked like it was not the right size for him. And I don't know, I had nightmares about this little bear. Can
you draw this little bear? I want to know what this little bear
he I don't know, he had a huge forehead. He just looked a little evil. And it's funny because when you talk about your parents like chasing you, wanting to pinch you, like my dad did a thing. I think it was my sister and I were like so hyper, and we were playing nurse. We were like, oh, we're gonna give you vaccines or whatever. And he was just like so tired of us like pretending to give him like vaccines, I guess, that he pretended to be dead. And
oh shit! Like you gave him like a lethal injection.
Yeah,
oh shit! You mixed the serums up.
Oh my God!
You mixed the serums up.
And then he like. But he like played dead for a really long time. So at first we were like, haha, he's joking. But I swear to God, he must have like laid there for like at least a good 10 minutes. That for your like child brain, we started crying. We were like, we killed him.
That's so funny.
And then he pretended to be a zombie and chased us.
Well, joke's on him. You didn't become a doctor and make doctor money.
Right?
So...
Yeah. I was like, I can never give an injection to anybody in my life. Yeah. We were really scared. We were like...
That's so funny.
It was so traumatizing as a child. But now that I think about it, I'm like, it's pretty fucking funny. Do you have any crazy stories? Have your parents chased you?
No, not really.
Good. That's good.
My parents were not into like scaring at all. That I'm absolutely the weird one in my family, that I love horror, that I found that on my own. My parents hate that stuff.
That's so funny. Horror will find a way.
Yeah, I am the stereotypical goth middle child in a family of jocks.
Oh, really? That's so funny. That's so funny. Oh, yeah. And you were also like a party college kid, right?
I was, yeah. Partied a lot in college. So I'm like a weird, like, frat goth.
I love this.
Oh my god.
Frat goth. That's so funny. Oh my gosh. Would you say any of your characters in Halloween is a frat goth?
Probably Miles.
Yes, that's right. It's funny because I always imagine him to be like a little bit more like emo and sad, but I guess he's more like of a frat boy, I guess.
No, he listens to ska music, and when he turns 21 in vampire years, he will be playing the beer pong and doing keg flips and stuff.
That's so funny. That's so funny. He's my fave. I love him.
Yeah, he's not emo at all.
He's not, yeah. It's just because he's a vampire. You make the association, right? You're just kind of like, oh,
Yeah.
Edwards, I guess.
So how do you, as somebody who is currently playing around in the world of vampires development-wise also, how do you decide what rules to keep and what to break, and what rules to maybe like add your own thing that doesn't exist? Like, how strictly do you keep within the existing rules of monsters, and how much do you want to explore creating new lore?
I'm kind of in the same school of what we do in the shadows, where I try to stick to classic monster lore, but I will break the rules if it's funny, or I will get rid of things if they aren't funny.
Nice.
So it's like rule of cool, that like if I think it's fun and funny, then I'll keep it or get rid of it based on what I want.
Yeah, I like that Halloween is like really funny. You have like really fun character moments. Well, your characters are great. How do you approach comedy? Like, how do you pace your comedy when you write?
I try to write it like as realistic as I can. I guess not like realistic, but I want my teenagers to feel like believable teenagers. So the comedy comes from things that they say or the situations that they're put in, rather than like jokes or slapstick necessarily. Like, it's all situational.
Yeah,
because I want it to feel like you're hanging out with your friends.
Yeah, that's great. I was gonna ask you this question from your friend Elliot on Instagram. What was your favorite part about turning Halloween into a graphic novel?
Just that I got to do it. That somebody finally said yes to me after pitching it like a billion times. Somebody was like, yeah, let's go. And then I got to do it. I love building out the characters. I love, especially now that I'm in book 2, I get to expand the world beyond just the suburbs. So I'm hyped for book 2 and where that's gonna go.
Well, that answered the question from at Super Ryan 64, who was like, "Is there anything you can say about Halloween 2?"
Yeah, we're gonna go beyond the suburbs in book 2, so get ready for some crazy shit.
I hope we're gonna go to hell or something monster
Or a farm.
Yeah.
We're gonna go to a pumpkin patch. They already went to a pumpkin patch. They're gonna go to a spirit Halloween store.
Oh, that's pretty funny. At Adriosa Gaming on Twitter asked, what was a surreal full circle moment that you experienced?
Oh, working on Invader ZIM for sure.
Oh, yeah.
That, like, I was a massive Invader ZIM fan growing up. So getting to work on the comics and the movie was, like, some real full circle shit. Just like, man, I get to do this, and with the people who originally made it. Like, it's not getting rebooted by somebody. I'm working with the people who made the original thing, and I think that that was really cool.
How did that dream come true happen? Like, how did you get on to this dream come true thing?
So I met Aaron Alexovich, who was the lead character designer, and then also the comics person when the comics eventually started going. I met him at Comic-Con in 2008 is when I met him. It was my first Comic-Con. I was graduating high school. And so I met him at the Slave Labor Graphics booth because I loved his comic, Serenity Rose, which is really good. So we just followed each other on social media and kept running into each other at conventions. So he became somebody who I was just like convention friends with, internet friends with. And then by the time the Zim comics were happening, he was drawing them, but he didn't want to do all the line work. And he was like, all right, well, Moss has really good lines and I know they're looking for work. So let's see if Moss is available. So I got to do the line work for the first 5 issues of the Invader Zim comics with him doing all the pencils, which was fun. And so from there,
that's so sick.
And then from there, Oni Press wanted to do a panel for like the return of Invader Zim. So I got invited to go to that, and so that was when I met Jonan and a bunch of other people, Ricky Simons, and a bunch of Invader Zim folks. So I just became friends with them after meeting them, and so by the time the Zim movie was staffing up, I had already done my internships at Blue Sky Pixar and worked on the Lego movie, so I had the boarding experience to back up the Invader Zim fandom that I had in my body, so that it just like I feel like I was built for it in a way that like I didn't know it was going to happen, but somewhere in the universe something knew it was going to happen. And so I had built up the right parallel skills and the right parallel relationships so that when they converged that it could work.
That is so cool, dude. That is like so cool.
Yeah.
I still can't believe, I don't know, it's crazy when you grow up reading somebody's comics, and especially because when Jonan was publishing Johnny and Squee and everything else, like there wasn't, like, he wasn't accessible on the internet like he is now in a way with like Twitter and Twitch and all these. Like now, if you're a big Jonan fan, you can go and watch him stream.
Yeah.
Which was absolutely not the case back in the 2000s. So it is kind of crazy to be like, whoa, like he's around.
You live in the same world as this person.
Yeah, it's so crazy.
And I feel like that's just happened more and more as I've gone through my career. It's like, I'll meet new people and be like, oh my god, you did this thing that changed my life as an 8-year-old. Like,
oh my god, it's so crazy.
It's crazy.
And it's funny because I've been on that side of like, I told like one of my coworkers, I was like, wait, you worked on Real Monsters? That's crazy. I was obsessed with this show as a little kid. And, and they're like, oh, cool. Yeah, that was a job.
It's so funny.
I fucking loved that show.
That show ruled.
That show is, oh my god. I actually asked, I think it's okay for us to say that on the internet, but I asked at Nickelodeon, I was like, oh, can we like reboot? Like, if there's a reboot that's gonna happen, please, can it be Real Monsters? And they were like, it's tied up. It's tied up and legal. So,
fuck.
I know.
How could it possibly be?
I know. I'm so sad.
I just want to draw gross monsters all day.
It's like somebody has the contract and they're like, I'm running away to, South America, and I'm hiding in the forest, and you'll never get me.
When they say that
this parchment,
it's tied up in legal, what they mean is that the contract is like tied to a train track, and somebody's gonna run it over with a train.
Save me! Yeah,
it's literally tied up.
Yeah.
I can't reach it. It's too far. This is okay. So Adrius Gaming asked a bunch of questions. I'm not gonna ask all of them because we have other people asking questions too. But I wonder, that one's kind of funny. What do you think of the Fresno Nightcrawlers?
I love them. Top 5 favorite cryptid.
Top 5 favorite cryptid. Yeah, they're so cool.
Whoa, I have never even heard of the Fresno Nightcrawlers.
Let me just populate it in the
They're just these little guys.
They're really cute.
These guys?
And they're very slow. They're
whoa.
So if you're listening on YouTube,
I'm trying them right now.
On YouTube, we have. So we already kind of answered this question from Matt Fanart with L4807 about destruction writing your comics. Like you said, you kind of read it like a TV show.
Yeah.
But I kind of like their other question, which is, how do you go in trying to find a good publisher? Because you had a relationship with Oni Press. Like, how come you ended up going with Penguin instead
because
of like,
by the time I was doing this, and by the time I thought about maybe doing a graphic novel again, well, there's 2 reasons. So the first reason is that all my contacts at Oni Press had left the company by then. So I didn't know anyone there anymore. I probably could have reached out to somebody and found someone to pitch to, but I didn't know anyone anymore. So the second reason is that my publisher reached out to me. I didn't reach out to them. I am extremely lucky that I didn't have to do any of the legwork. I didn't have to do the whole query process. I didn't put together an actual book pitch. They came to me and they were like, great, looks like you have some comics experience on top of your animation experience. Your resume's great. We don't need an official book pitch. We'll just take your animation pitch and go from there.
Oh, man. That's so cool.
So
that's sick.
I skipped a huge part of the process, so I don't have a lot of information on how to find a publisher because I didn't.
Yeah, that's the dream, dude. Well, I think we already kind of talked about your writing schedule. That was a question from Angel Pearson. Thanks for your questions, y'all. Very much appreciated. And, we asked you all these questions from our followers, but the podcast has a question for you.
Okay.
So, about creative block. Do you love us? No, joking. We're going to ask you if do you ever face creative block? And if you do, what does it feel like and how do you deal with it?
Yeah, I get creative block writing more than anything. I'm just not good at it, that I feel like if I sit down to draw, it's so ingrained in me from storyboarding and drawing comics that I can usually figure something out to draw, even if it's not good, even if it's not something I'm going to post. But with writing, it's not something that comes easy to me, so I get blocked frequently. So if that happens, I usually try to refresh myself and refill my creative well. So I'll listen to music that inspires me. I'll go to shows. I'll go to museums. I'll go to movies. Hang out with friends. Or I'll just info dump in a journal. I'll leave my house. Getting out of my house is a big thing. That if I can go take a journal to a coffee shop or somewhere and just sit down and vomit on the page, even if it's just bullet points, just to get something out that I can organize later. I find that helps a lot. Yeah, going out and not looking at a screen is the big thing.
Yeah, it's tough. I feel like now, I don't know, especially, that's the one thing, I don't know, I probably said this, especially early on in the podcast, but that's the thing I missed about living in Japan is I didn't really have good internet on my phone. I think I didn't have internet at all on my phone when I lived there.
So you'd have to go do things.
Yeah, exactly. So when I would go out to a coffee shop, I would have no means of distraction, and that was pretty awesome. Kind of miss that because it is true. The screens are so distracting.
Mm-hmm. And also just looking at a blank page, I feel is not helpful.
Yeah. Sometimes you have to force yourself to write some bullshit, and then you're like, okay, now I can write something better than this. Do you ever call your friends or brainstorm with some buddies, or are you just kind of
Not as often as I should. That's probably a good idea. I should start doing that.
I was just wondering if you're more of a creator in your own solitary lair.
I tend to work by myself, but I do like when I work with people. I like coming up with stuff with friends or bouncing ideas with friends. I think that's really helpful. I just don't do it enough.
I love that we got to talk into really very intricate details about you being a director, about the intricate details of the software difference between feature and TV and your writing process. Have you ever worked on a board-driven show?
Nope.
Yeah, so that must have been I've also never worked on a board-driven show, so starting to write is so scary at the beginning.
It's so scary because I've had people who are like, oh, but you're a board artist, isn't writing easy? It's no, I don't work on board-driven shows, so it doesn't come easy to me that somebody gives a fully written script to me every time. I've never had to do that. So I think anybody who does work on script-driven is a rock star, or on board driven is a rock star, and should be paid 3 times as much as what they're currently getting paid.
100%.
Those shows are so hard. There's not very many of them. I think that even fewer now. But that is a difficult. Some of my hardest jobs have been storyboard driven shows.
They're probably the most rewarding, but they're also probably the most like, I hate myself, I don't want to work on this anymore kind of
Well,
jobs.
I mean, there's some interesting things that you can pull off. Like you can pitch a song and then you get royalties for every time the episode airs. Like there's all sorts of like weird little things that like you can sort of make anything happen. You can, pitch a storyboard driven show. And I mean, there's board artists that have pitched characters that they made up for the board driven show, and then when they pitch it, they think of them for the voice as the character, and then they become the voice of the character. That's happened on a few board driven shows. It's interesting, and also they're very rarely paid enough.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You are right.
Not enough time, not enough money. That's animation, baby.
It's animation, baby. Yeah, there's not enough time to even talk about animation, so John knows what I'm doing and he knows I'm struggling, but
You can do it.
thank you so much, Moss, for making the time to come on this podcast. It was so fun.
Yeah, of course.
And with that's the end of this creative block. Moss, thanks for being our guest and sharing your story.
Thanks for having me. This was so much fun.
And thanks to our listeners. Follow us on social media at CRTV Block, where we ask for drawing prompts and questions to ask our guests. Huge thanks to our only one thank. Huge thanks to our editor Clements for editing the podcast, and Marco for helping us produce the show.
And if you love our show, you can support us on Patreon. Becoming a patron gets you early access to interviews and access to your Discord community. Another great way you can support the show is to like, comment, subscribe, talk to your friends, your grandma about us, only if they're okay with swearing, because getting more ears on the podcast helps us just grow, and that's what we're trying to do. So click the link in the description of this episode to access our Patreons and all the other social medias. I've been your host, V.
And I was Sean, but tomorrow I'm going to be a husband. I'm getting married tomorrow.
Oh, shit.
No
Keep
way.
being creative, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.